I want to talk you through a job that I was hired for as a camera op, working with a production company who are hired by a nationwide chain producing a piece for International Women's Day. On this shoot, I would be setting up a 2-camera interview, lighting and sound. On the call sheet, there were 7 interviews to complete. At the same time, my friend and colleague Jay Hipkiss would be out shooting B-roll with the client. This is Leanne Rogers. She was the producer-director, coordinating the day with the client and asking the questions and making edit notes. So let's get straight into the first interview setup. I've set up the 2 cameras, being the Sony FX6 as the A cam, using the 2470 2.8 G Master. On the front of that, I've got a matte box with a mist filter. And the B cam is the Sony A7IV with the G Master 24105 f4. For the lighting, we wanted to keep it small and mobile as we'd be moving between different locations all day. For the key light, I've used the Falconeyes 150 watt flex light, which is very good for on the go when you're not fighting daylight. If you're wondering why our interview subject is stood in a chair, that's because there's a safety rail behind her, which was quite intrusive in the shot. We wanted to knock that out a little bit and see more into the warehouse. We also had Leanne, the producer-director, stood in a chair to meet the eye line. We chose to do this second setup outside. The only contribution towards lighting here is a reflector, which was given a little fill, just so that it wasn't completely dark on the left-hand side of her face. I know this is what the wandering DP refers to as a sun sandwich, but when you're on the move and you have to work very fast, and you're not producing a beautiful commercial, but you are a videographer with 7 interviews to complete, and you're running a 2-camera and lighting setup yourself, sometimes you have to make the best of what you have to get what is acceptable and move on. This next interview, very much like the first one, we're using the flex light again. I think what the Tl-60 is doing here is giving us some colour contrast, and also it does seem quite believably motivated by those downlights on the wall. This next setup is very much like the previous. The only difference here being we're shooting in a room which has daylight, which we don't want to use because it's not constant and changeable, and these interviews may run for 20 minutes to half an hour. And I've just popped up a reflector in front of the window to cut the sunlight from hitting the client's face. The brief for this project, after the interviews with the eye line looking off camera, also required a shot of looking down the lens. We moved the camera and kept the lighting largely the same. By the time we've come to shoot the next interview, in the same space, we reconfigured again, but the sun had started getting quite strong in the room. So to combat this, we brought down exposure and brought in from the kit room the Godox VL300, which is a much more powerful light with a 90cm softbox from Newer. One of the challenges of having to shoot so many interviews and operate and move all the equipment is that sometimes you're not happy with absolutely every shot. Now, whilst I was really happy with the framing of this shot, I love how the sun's falling on the background here. One thing which did slip my mind to do was to just cut that sunlight from hitting the subject's face, which moved as the interview went on, and it's not as pleasing as I would like. As a contrast to the previous room we were in this room we had blinds, so we could cut the sunlight hitting the subject's face again. We left a little bit hitting the body. I've seen this in some movie breakdowns on YouTube, and I quite like how it looks. But we had some lovely depth. We have the sun hitting the background again, and overall very happy with this shot. Thanks for taking the time to watch this. I hope it was somewhat helpful or interesting. I think we can draw a conclusion that when you're up against it with time, you can still make some great work and you can still make some mistakes. So drink more coffee.